Hello and welcome to Facts on Film. I am your host, Hannah Ogilvie-Young, and this is a podcast where we discuss all things fact representation in film, TV, and wider media. And this episode, I'm joined by horror film critic, editor at whatascreenpodcast.com, and the co-host of Gore Things Pod. It's Ygraine Hackett-Cantabrana. Hello, Ygraine.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me back on the podcast.
I know. I was thinking, when was the last time you were on? I think you were here to talk about Criminal Minds was the last time.
It was, yeah. That was the last one.
That was the last one. And we're here to talk about something different, very different, I want to say. As someone who's not a Criminal Minds fan, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is a very different, very different film.
Completely different.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad to have you back, and I really appreciate you, because I literally asked you days ago if you have the time to come on the pod, because the biggest film potentially of the year has come out in the horror genre at the very least, 28 years later. And I watched it on Thursday on the preview night. I think you watched it the night before at the critic screening. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, it was one of those days, one of the preview screenings anyway here in Ireland.
Yeah, and then because I remember I saw your story that morning before I saw it, and I was like, interesting. I wonder why Ygraine wasn't potentially that hot on it, because I'm so pumped. And then I came out the screen and going, I know exactly why Ygraine might not have been that pumped for it. So I'm so happy we can talk about it in depth today. Just for the listeners, we are going to have complete spoilers in this episode from the very beginning, and because I myself won't be able to go, well, that's a spoiler, I should say that right now, because my brain doesn't work that way. So just FYI, if you haven't seen the film and you're interested in this conversation, perhaps watch it before, but also spend your money however you want to spend your money. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make you go watch this film. So, commercial review, we've got released literally June 2025, directed by Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, who are the team coming back from 28 Days Later. And then this is the third in the 28 series. 28 Days Later in 2002, 28 Weeks Later in 2007. It stars Alfie Williams, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Ralph Fiennes. It currently has an 89% positive review on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is doing very well in the box office. I believe it's currently just behind How to Train Your Dragon in terms of box office success. It's making buku bucks, as we probably anticipated it would, and there is a sequel already greenlit, already filmed, which will be coming out January 2026, which, again, I want to get your thoughts on that in a bit. But before we get into all of those details, Ygraine, could you let me and the listeners know what 28 Years Later is all about?
So it centres itself on an island just off the mainland of Britain, where this community have kind of come together, and they've gone back to the good old days of old Blighty, and they're doing things for themselves and trying to protect themselves against the infected, which are on the mainland. And it primarily centres itself around this family that consists of Spike, who's a 12-year-old boy, his dad Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and his mother Isla, played by Jodie Comer. His mother Isla is sick in some way. They don't know what it is. It makes her very disorientated. It causes her to forget things and also to get really bad headaches. His dad, Jamie, takes Spike out onto the mainland one day to get his first kill of an infected. They get chased by an alpha, and when they come back to the mainland, Spike learns that there once was a doctor on the island, but he now lives on the mainland, and so Spike wants to take his mother to meet this doctor and potentially have her diagnosed, and he could possibly cure her of whatever is going on with her.
Perfect. Okay. Let's go in. Let's get into
deep breath.
Let's deep breath, everyone. Everyone deep breath. Let's get into this. So my first question for you, Ygraine, is what is your relationship to the 28 ... series? Were you excited for this latest installment?
I was so excited. I'm such a huge fan of 28 Days Later. It changed what we think of as the zombie. I know, obviously, people are very picky about this, and they're like, they're not zombies, they're infected. Danny Boyle has said it's a zombie film, so if Danny Boyle says so, then it's a zombie film. It changed the face of zombie films. It made us find, it made us see that zombies weren't just these shuffling slow ghouls, could be virus infected very fast. It kind of brought the horror back to the zombie genre. It made them really scary. And so, yeah, I love the griminess of the first one. Now, 28 weeks later isn't great, but sure, look, it's there, it's within the canon, it's grand. But yeah, I was so excited. The trailers made it look really like dark and kind of just right up my alley. And yeah, I was seated for this like day one. I was absolutely seated.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Like 28 Days Later is one of my favorite films of all time. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. And I completely agree. It is a zombie film. Zombies are infected. It was brilliant. I am a defender of 28 Weeks Later. I totally recognise that it's not as good. It loses a lot of that Britishness that makes 28 Days Later so appealing. But at the same time, I really like their clunky American foreign policy thing going on in it. I like it. And then so yeah, for this I was like, I'm ready. Not only have you got another entry into this series. I hesitate to call it a franchise because it's only the third one, but you have Boyle and Garland back as well, which Garland has gone off to do some incredible feature films, some incredible stories like Ex Machina, Annihilation, whatever your opinions are on men, but that is divisive, which will definitely feed into this film. He's gone off to become a real name in Hollywood, and obviously Danny Boyle has had great success, maybe lesser success as the years have gone on more recently, but definitely still a name in British cinema that piques people's interest for sure. So I think all the cards were there for me of going, this is going to be an absolute banger. I am, like you say, I'm seated, I'm locked in. Give me post-apocalyptic British zombies, please. And yeah. Well, let's get into it. So, you mentioned the story. We're following this family, right? This quite young family with Jodie Comer and Aaron Taylor-Johnson playing parents to a 12-year-old boy. And we're seeing both of their kind of parenting styles at work. So we see Jamie Aaron Taylor-Johnson, he's very, what's the word? Sensitive, or he's very aware of how his son is perceived or how he moves through the world. And we see this at the very beginning because Spike's going onto the mainland for the first time, right? And before they go on to the mainland, the village elders are there, and this woman says, I do think he's too young. Usually we see men going to the mainland when they're like 14, 15, and Spike is 12. But like Jamie's like, no, he's ready. And I was like, oh, okay. Like immediately, I know what we're doing here, right? Like it's not dissimilar to the themes that were present in the very first film, 28 Days Later, when we see Jim having to grow up and get accustomed to this new way of life in an infected Britain. So this is not a dissimilar theme for this series as from the beginning. But yeah, we get to the mainland, and Jamie's so excited for Spike to pop his infected cherry, as you alluded to earlier. We're confronted with this new version of the infected, which again is really interesting because the whole premise of this film, how the trailer's been set up, is that we've evolved. The infected have evolved, and they'd have had to have been, right, Ygraine? Like because at the end of 28 weeks later, like we understand the life cycle of these zombies are 28 days, like, hence the title. Of starvation and thirst, but so they've evolved. But the first version of the infected we see are what they call the slow lows. And Ygraine, could you describe what the slow lows are like to the listeners?
I'll try. So the slow lows are almost the bottom feeders of the zombie feeding chain, if you like. They are literally on their stomachs crawling. They're portrayed as bloated, their faces are quite bloated, their skin is mottled. They are, we first see him and he's like slurping worms. It's kind of portrayed as if they've been sedentary in, marshland or boggy landscape, and so they've become bloated.
Yes.
However, this is one of my main problems. Is the rage zombies of 28 are not dead bodies. They're not corpses. And so why would you have infected that are seemingly bloated from like water-based decay. To me, it doesn't make sense. And so you get this depiction of a larger body, a fat body, as the bottom of the food chain. They're,
yes,
almost not dangerous. They're, something to laugh at almost.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I just don't understand why they are there. Because, we have this thing in the previous entries where they were like, the zombies are starving, that's how they die, blah, 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 blah. But, like, surely if the zombies are bigger, they've been eating well, they've had, they've been eaten, and if they're bloated, then I don't know, it's very confused the way they've decided to introduce these types of zombies. Because they're not dead. So why would a zombie be bloated if they're not dead?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think from a storytelling point of view, I think it was really interesting how I guess we've completely skipped past the opening scene, but the opening scene takes place on outbreak year, like 2001, 2002. So we've seen your traditional 28 infected zombies. So I guess maybe from a storytelling point of view, they were like, oh, well, we don't want to show that again yet. Let's introduce this a new evolved or devolved, right?
Yeah.
Infected, and also like if you you mentioned it's like an easier target, and I was like, I guess like they've gone, well, Spike, this is his first kill, this is like an entry level kill. But the problem coming into it so many years later is they have an established lore, and they've tried to use this idea of evolution, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but I think they've tried to use this evolution to subvert the lore that has already been established. And so you're right, we've got these Slolos, which are fat beings, and I think that's really important, especially when you compare them to your regular infected and then your alphas. These are the only larger bodied infected we see. I'm questioning, are they Slolos, as they call them, because they were fat victims of the rage virus, or has the rage virus caused them to kind of like blow up, for lack of a better term, get fat, and it's like they're so fat they can't withstand their own weight, so they're just like moving like slugs on the ground. And you mentioned bottom feeding and 100 because they're slurping on these worms. I'm like, how much calorie can you get from a worm? And I'm just going, and especially when you compare it to, we see in these interesting animal documentary shots of the infected through this red lens we see kind of intercut throughout the film, and the regular infected, the alpha, are eating deer, whereas the Slolos can only eat worms, and like you say, they're not seen as a threat. There's just, as soon as I saw it, I went, oh, well, we have to discuss this, because even compared to like the villagers we see on the island, any other kind of human character we see, I didn't notice anyone fat of note, especially no one fat in a speaking role. And so this is like one of the very few times we see a fat body, and it's in such like you say, the grey mottled skin, they've got this slime on them as well. I don't know if you notice, they've got this slime, whereas the regular infected are all covered in blood. So I'm like, well, why are they slime? I understand that one of the themes of this film is animal kingdom, the infected animal kingdom. We have, like you say, bottom feeders, and we've got kind of like the middle of the ground regular infected, and then you've got the alphas. I guess I'm left with is the question of why. Ultimately, I come back to this idea of, I think they wanted the audience to be like, gross, you know?
Yeah.
And that's
it. I think I'm remembering this correctly, but one of the SFX artists said that they wanted to kind of mold them on like a Junji Ito kind of look. So
what's that? Sorry.
Junji Ito, he is he's a Japanese artist, and he does a lot of like comics and cartoons, but he does like real, you'd recognize some of his imagery. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Like real kind of like grotesque imagery. But it just gives me the thing that they're like, okay, we want something to look absolutely disgusting and to really repulse audiences, so we're going to make these zombies fat. And you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, but they don't have to be fat. You know that kind of way. It's like you could have had anybody, like any literal physical body with mottled skin, with slimy skin, slurping worms, and you would have been like, ew, gross,
Yeah,
because worms are gross,
because we're
like,
100%.
yeah.
And especially when they make the purposeful choice to not have any bigger bodied actors in the ordinary infected roles. And again, I go, okay, I guess you're trying to tell me that because they run everywhere,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be any fat zombies or fat normal infected. But like, I know people who run. You run, don't you, Ygraine?
I do, yeah. I'm currently training for a triathlon, so yeah.
Well, there you go,
Yeah,
right? And
like,
it's like,
larger bodied people can run. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
just like some kind of body diversity, because like it's like, it's just so, because it's a choice, isn't it? I mean, this is what we have to come back to every time we see fat representation implied in such a way, like it's a choice. They made a choice there. Now, what I don't know, and maybe if you saw more from the SFX, is were these actors put in prosthetics, were they put in fat suits for their roles? I don't know. I've really not seen much about these characters. And to even amplify this point more, where we see another deviation of the infected virus in the alpha, there's a whole scene where they question why the alpha exists, right? And we get this, it's like the rage virus is like steroids to these specific people. But there is no hypothesis or explanation given of why these slow lows exist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's just they're not even worthy of speculation, and I just think it's so like disregarding, and coming back to your point of just like, it's just meant to be a bit of a joke for the audience, and that's really sad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's quite a few points in this film that I was like, oh, that's just like, it's just an easy direction to take. It feels too easy. And I fear that that's one thing that I kind of didn't like about this film, was just its laziness.
Yeah. And I could not agree more. I think what I'm seeing a lot of commentary around this film, it's doing really well on social media. We're having a lot of the kind of, big faces I've seen, like film critics and film enthusiasts on social media, like, laud this film. And like, I don't want to piss on anyone's chips, right? If you like this film, oh my God, well done. I'm so happy for you. But this is such a surface level film.
Yeah.
And it tries to, because, coming back to kind of the themes of this film and the plot and the story, we've mentioned the animal kingdom thing. We've touched on that there's this clear, like, family dynamic going on. We've got this idea of masculinity, and we're going to get into patriarchy and whether that masculinity can get toxic, right? And it's all at this very high level. And I go, why are, like, 28 days later, there are definitely some things that are handled clunkily, if that's a word. But there's definitely this idea of like isolation and what it is to be human and connection. And we see that like through Selena's character in the first installment. And I just think all of that nuance is missing in this, or where they could, I think they think they're adding nuance.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
There's a scene, which I cannot wait to talk to you about, which I rolled my eyes so far back into my fucking head. And everyone on social media is like, my God, it's the best scene. And I'm like, is it? Is it? And we'll get there. I'm teasing the audience when I'm talking about it. But anyway, let's carry on. So Spike gets his first kill, right? He gets his first kill with the slow lows, and Jamie takes a few out too. And then we get to, there's a house, and there's an infected that has Jimmy carved in it. That'll come back later. And then there's a whole thing about like how Jamie's just wants his son to kill. They have no souls. Blah blah blah. And then, but then when they're trying to get back, I think they're kind of like progressing. They find a deer that's been massacred, and a head is put in the branches. And when Jamie sees that, he goes, "Oh fuck." That means there's an alpha about, and we're like, shit, that sounds fucking, and that does sound terrifying. I mean, the infected are already scary. I don't need a massive muscle-bound one as well. And we see that our alpha of this family is confronted with the alpha of the infected, and this infected man can control the infected, and he can squawk, and they go after their prey. Very Animal Kingdom-esque. And we hide, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. And then they finally decide to make a break for it to get back to the island. Oh my God, Ygraine, this scene
I hated this scene so
Oh my
much.
god, I hated the scene!
Hated it so much.
I hated it. So we're getting onto the causeway. The father and son are running, and they're kind of joking. It's like, oh, we did it. But then the alpha controls the birds.
Fly, my pretties, fly.
No, and I'm going, what is going on? What is going on? And I've not seen anyone talk about that, by the way. I've not seen anyone talk about that on social media, because that is barmy. And the birds kind of stop them, and then the alpha's running full force at the boys. And in the background, because there's no light pollution in Britain at this point, we've got these amazingly fantastical celestial displays, which I loathed.
Yeah.
I think it was the combination of the 28 weeks later level night shots versus this incredibly bright celestial display of, like, I don't know, supernovas and constellations here, and then this alpha just running full pelt at them, and then they finally, like, the defensive line on the village from the villagers managed to take down the alpha through like a fucking harpoon gun or something. That's how beastie these things are. And then they get in, and then they have in their party to celebrate Spike's first foray onto the mainland. And I didn't find it intense. I found it, like, laughable, and I thought, like, everything that the alpha I thought were what was scary about the alpha was just kind of completely lost in that moment for me personally. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. It was the celestial setting and the, kind of northern lights lighting. And then it was every time a foot hit the water, it had this weird, like, freeze frame of a splash.
Yes.
It was just really bizarre, and it didn't fit. One thing I love about 28 Days Later is when there is chase scenes, there's so much peril and panic and threat. Whereas this had nothing. There was no threat to it. And the only thing I can think of is because you go from that to this, like, really chaotic folk horror style village fete party.
Yes.
That's very frenetic, that Spike is so uncomfortable in. He sees his dad in a role that upsets him and makes him, he's sick from the alcohol. And all I can think of is that they tried to create this contrast where they were like, outside here, there's a threat, but there's beauty to it, and there's beauty to being away from this colony. But this colony, there's something quite dark about them and how they see the masculine in the village. And that's the only way I could think about it. But at the same time, that is never explored.
Yes.
And so how can you set up something like that but not explore the contrast? And so, yeah, it really took me out of it.
Yeah, no, I had not thought of that at all. That's a really good point, because, like, there's something really Wicker Man about the village. And I'm not mad at that. That's really interesting, because if you've been in this really isolated village for 28 years, you'd be crazy. Like, you have to be. But there's this, like, really interesting motif that they keep showing, which is this mask with the bleeding eyes. And there's no explanation to it. Now, granted, they may explain that in the next film, but I was left going, what's that about? That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to have. And
because that's something we saw in the trailer.
Yes.
And so with that, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Like, that looks a bit weird. And then it's like a real ephemeral point in this movie, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and we have the female villagers are the ones who are setting up the party, and there's bunting. They've still got the picture of the queen up, and, like, very, like, World War II vibe. Like, be British and keep carry on, and whatever the phrase is. It's very that. And, like, I like your potential line of thinking there. But if that is what they were going for, it's not obvious.
Yeah.
And I guess as well, we're shown that from a very early in the film, like, this is the first act, that the alpha can be taken down. So from a sense of, like, peril, like you were mentioning, I go, oh, well, this is, like, the big threat of the film, right? Well, they can be taken. I mean, don't get me wrong, it takes a bit to get them down, but they're not invincible. So immediately I'm like, okay, well, there's always a chance then. Whereas I thought actually when they were running away from the regular infected and they were kind of doing the you shoot an arrow then I shoot an arrow thing, I thought that was well done. I quite liked that scene because it did feel really intense and very claustrophobic. Whereas I think with the Alpha, I just kind of got lost in the noise of the scene. But then bringing it back to the village, you know, you mentioned the whole masculinity thing at display, where we have Jamie talking to the crowd and they're like on bated breath. They're like hungry to know these tales of this 12-year-old boy, you know, assassinating, murdering these infected people, and he's you know, adding flourishes because of course, I mean, that's kind of what anyone does, but there's something so icky in the way that Jamie does it, and obviously it really puts Spike off, bless him. And then he's having beer and obviously he doesn't do well, but then we see that Jamie goes off with this woman they lingered on a little bit too long at the very beginning of the film, and I was like, oh, there she is. I think she may have even been wearing red, and I was like, oh god. And so he goes off with, I think her name is Rosie. She doesn't say she doesn't say a line, and they go to like some kind of like cave or crypt almost looking place, and Spike is followed, and we see that, you know, he's making out with Rosie, Jamie's making out with Rosie, and Jamie goes down on Rosie. This brings me to my next big issue with this film, which is a man like Jamie would not go down on a woman. He wouldn't! I'm being so serious. And it just fell. I was talking to a friend of mine, Nikita, she's actually been on the pod, she's part of Fat Lib London. And she mentioned, she was saying, like, it felt like they were trying to throw a bone for the women. Yeah. You know, this is a film that has not had any women in it so far, apart from Isla and the mum, but it's very, like, loose at the moment. And they were like, oh, well, Jamie isn't all bad. He will eat some puss. And I'm just like, no, he wouldn't. He is toxic masculinity running through the man's veins. He'll punch a wall at a moment's notice. He clearly hates his wife. Are you telling me? No way. I don't believe it for a second. So that annoyed me. And then poor Spike. I really actually like Spike. I think Alfie Williams does a really good job with his character, and he brings a lot of emotional depth to it, where I do think they also still struggle with his character development because it all happens very quickly. I don't know if you felt like that, because we get back to, you know, he gets back to his mum, and then this man mentions the doctor, Dr. Kelson, as you said, and he's like, oh, maybe he can help my mum. And so he's like starting like creating this plan that we've got to get mum to the doctor, but dad is like, no, not having it, basically. And he says like he basically says, oh, we don't go to him because he's a weirdo, because when I was 15 I saw him burning all these bodies and he waved at me and I thought no. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, like this, you've made a decision at 15 and have never thought about it more. You've never matured past that decision. But Spike doesn't care. He's like, no, I'm gonna defend my mom, and he like pulls a knife on his dad. I was like, fucking hell, Spike. Where'd that come from? Where's that spunk come from? So we then get Isla off the island. I actually went to the bathroom at this point, Ygraine, so I actually don't know how that happened.
He sets a fire in the wee little shop that they have, and so all the watch people have to go and try and put out this fire, and they've all got like teeny little buckets, and they're trying to put out this big fire with their teeny little buckets.
On the little buckets, it's not like they were like surrounded by water or anything. Oh well. So then, but how does Spike tell his mum? How does he say we're going to go onto the mainland? Because I can't imagine she would have been.
He just
super
goes.
Keen.
He goes, we're going to the fields. We're going to the beach. Leads her across the causeway, and they get into a field in the middle of. So there's quite a fair bit of walking done, right?
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Hang on, this is the mainland, isn't it?" And he goes,
okay,
So, yeah.
I'd come back by that point, and because we're looking at like an old street, aren't we?
Yes.
There's like all these like dilapidated houses, like terraced houses, and I was like, well, we're quite far in here, love. How come we've only just clocked it? But apparently that was just how the film was made. So then I think the next thing that happens is they kind of do a bit of walking, and we see that like Isla's mental state. We knew it was bad, but it's definitely deteriorating, isn't it? Like she keeps on calling Spike dad or daddy.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, actually, that's a really interesting thing. Okay, cool. Like, there's a family dynamic here. We've got Spike becoming head of the house, basically, making the man of the house, making the decisions. She's seeing him as her father figure. But, you know, instead of, I don't know, looking into that more and what that means for Spike to all of a sudden have this parental role with his mum, it's used as a joke for when they are introduced to the Swedish soldier, Eric.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's all that was for?
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like a lot of anything that has to do with a woman in this film is very pushed to the side or made a joke of.
Yes, 100%.
Like, even all the women you see in this film, all the mothers you see in this film, whether it's in the opening scene with the Teletubbies thing, whether it's Isla, or we'll get onto the pregnant infected later on, they're all killed in order for their children to survive, which is bullshit, if you ask me. And then the women are, or the other women are sexual objects of lust, in which we see with Rosie or the Swedish guy's fiance, who again is a joke. And it just feels like, I don't know, like, and especially when we think of Men, like, I'm a really big fan of the film Men. I actually really liked it, but I'm just like, how are you writing these women to be so two-dimensional?
Yeah.
When you've previously written, like, a film, Men, I don't know. I'm really confused about a lot of their choices when it comes to depicting women and people of color. Like, anyone that isn't a white man, basically. And it just gets up my back. I don't know. I'm very like, really? It's 2025? Do we have to?
I could not agree more. Like, that is my biggest issue with this film. Is I am never going to be mad at a film, especially a horror film, which wants to explore the oppressive systems of patriarchy and the damage that toxic masculinity does to people. But I'm really fucking tired of those themes being explored exclusively in how it impacts men. And that is what this film is. I don't know how you can talk about the patriarchy, what it is to be a man, and completely fail to centre women in that conversation. And it pissed me off. And I didn't like Men, but I know people did, and that's cool. Like, wherever floats your boat. But I just came out going, I am fucking sick of seeing this male-centered perspective when women are arguably the most impacted by those systems. And you're absolutely right. The treatment of women, they literally go, we can't have more than one woman in a scene at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm baffled by it. So we've got I love Jodie Comer. I love her. She is truly a generational talent. She is a chameleon. But she doesn't have a lot to do in this film because she's a plot device only. She doesn't have any character development. She doesn't have an arc. She is there for Spike's emotional development and a way for Spike to show that he's not being completely indoctrinated into the patriarchal dogma that his father follows. That's it. That is all her role is. And like you say, when they do bring up other women, so like when we get introduced to Swedish soldier, what's his name? Eric.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you. We see that, you know, he has this fiance or ex-fiance back home, and shows a picture to Spike, and Spike, they start having this joke about, because she's, you know, a 25 young woman who may like some filler. You know, a little bit of enhancement here and there. And instead of using the opportunity to be like, whoa, doesn't like the beauty standard force is like unobtainable expectation on women, they go, aren't women so dumb?
Yeah.
And it's no further commentary, Ygraine. It is a joke for the audience only. The laugh that got in my screening was big, and I went, oh shit, they've really dropped the ball. They've really dropped the ball in this theme. And I don't know how, like you say, Alex Garland, who is no stranger to this theme, annihilation, men, even Civil War, talks about the patriarchy and how women are impacted by it. How did he get this bit so wrong?
Yeah. It just seems so basic. And
Yeah,
so like something I equated this film to was it was like watching an episode of like The Walking Dead or Fear of the Walking Dead. It was almost like it was trying to appeal to audiences of that have watched The Walking Dead.
right.
And so it's very base level. It feels like this Americanized version of Britain, and it just I don't know, it just feels like laziness, like we said before, just pure laziness, that they're like all women are just a plot device, they've got no real characteristics of themselves, and they're just there for a laugh, really, and it's all about men and the poor men's and etc etc etc, and you're just like,
Couldn't agree more.
like, get fucked, mate, like
Yeah.
no. Like literally get fucked.
Literally, and I could not agree more. And then, you know, they explore this further with Eric, Swedish soldier Eric, because this, honestly, I was like, where are you going to go with this one? And it was when they're talking about the Alpha, because he's just been chased down by one of his Alphas. He's lost his whole team to the Alpha, and he's going, you know, he asks, what the hell was that big guy? And he uses a Swedish word which means better. And I was like, interesting, where are we going with that? And Spikes mentions the whole steroid theory that they have, even though he doesn't know what steroids are, and I thought that was cute. And then he goes, oh, well, this is Eric, he goes, I have Viking blood in me. I wonder if I would become an alpha. And I was like, now that's interesting. You've got characters who are fantasizing. If they were to become infected, would they become an alpha? Because of course that's aspirational. If you compare that to our slow lows earlier, they're not very aspirational, are they, Ygraine? You don't want to be crawling on your stomach eating worms. You want to be the alpha, right? Okay, that's a really interesting thread. Where is this going to go?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Also, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So, what did you think to Eric in Eric's inclusion into the story?
Didn't really understand it. Like, I was just like, why is he? I was just kind of like, why is he? I mean, I know they had to kind of show that, you know, perhaps do this thing about Brexit and how, you know, the UK is cut off from Europe now. But, like, is Sweden part of the EU?
Yes, it is, but they may not have the euro.
Right, okay. Right.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, well,
yes.
Geography and politics.
Right.
But yes, so obviously they were like, we're going to really drive home the whole Brexit thing and how Britain has been cut off from the rest of the EU who are thriving and they are going back to, you know, past decades or whatever. And so I kind of understand that, but I found him so annoying, like so annoying. And when he's going on about like, I should have been a delivery driver and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, they were trying to touch on this area of like, white masculinity, obviously bringing up the Vikings thing, which you know, for some reason white men now think they're all Vikings and it's very linked to white supremacy. Bringing up even just this whole alpha thing, you know, where men go on about being alphas and alpha this and alpha this and you're a beta and all this kind of shit, even though they don't even know what an alpha is. And so I kind of get that, but like we've said before, none of that was further explored. It was just very much like, oh, here's a possible theme, just a flash, and now we're going to move on. And you're like, hold on a minute. If you're going to bring up themes like white supremacy, like Brexit, like etc., 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 go with it. Don't just be like, you know, here's a possible theme and then move on. So I just found him quite redundant as a character. Almost as if they were like, okay, how are we going to get these characters from A to B? I know, let's introduce a soldier who can get them from A to B.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, like when Eric or like the whole Swedish Navy little boat is introduced, I was like, oh, this could be really interesting because I wanted to hear how the rest of the world reacted. I don't need to see it. I just want to like have a conversation where, you know, where is the rest of the world now? And so when Eric talks about delivery drivers, for example, and Spike doesn't know what delivery driver is. I went, well, no, he does, because there's a post office on the island. And there's no way they haven't explained what a post office was. And so that was dumb. And then, but then I was like, the phone, okay, cool. And then we see the ex-fiance, and like, oh, so nothing nothing has changed. Like, Garland had this really interesting opportunity to create an alternative timeline. You know, Britain has not been part of the global stage for 28 years. Has anything not happened the way it could have done if they were involved? But then, like, to your point, is like, oh, is it just a commentary on Brexit and how the UK really isn't as important to the culture that we thought we were? We thought they needed us more than need them and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I understand that as commentary, but it's not realistic, because the world would have changed if a whole island, if a G7 country was infected. Like, it would have massive ramifications. But instead he goes, oh no, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that just felt really lazy and not as exciting, or potentially a missed opportunity. And I thought that's what Eric was going to bring, and it just turned out that he was just like you say, he was just a bloke.
Yeah.
He was just a bloke who was obsessed with being top dog, with being a weapon of violence, because that's what all men want, right? Apparently. And so, I was a little bit disappointed, but then that leads really interestingly onto the scene where Isla, in her lucidity, hears a woman, I guess, crying, which leads us onto a shitty little train. We had actually seen, hadn't we? We'd already seen this infected pregnant woman previous, when there's this kind of another kind of like animal documentary shot of them bathing in the water, which is interesting, and they do nothing with it because we get immediately distracted by the pregnant person. And so Isla goes up, and obviously we understand infected to be really dangerous, but Isla apparently, even though she's lucid in this moment, she sees a woman going into childbirth, and instead of running or even killing the infected woman, she decides to help the infected woman through this childbirth. And a baby is born and is not infected, and they can tell it was not infected immediately. Let me know your thoughts, please.
As someone who has given birth,
yes,
just because you hold the hands of someone doesn't make it any easier to fucking push out a baby. Let me fucking tell you that.
That was good.
I just thought it was such a stupid scene. Like, how do they know the baby's not? I know they're like, the eyes, but you're like, when a baby comes out, their eyes are so like bloodshot anyway, because they've been screaming their head off and trying to come out like a tiny birth canal. So you're like, how do you know it's not infected? Like, and I just find it bizarre, and I didn't, like, obviously there's a point to it because it's going to come back in another film, but like, I don't know whether this was meant to like shock audiences.
Yeah, okay.
To be like, look, a zombie or an infected is giving birth, ew, gross, what the hell? I mean, we've already seen the pregnant zombie thing, haven't we? Like, we've already seen that in a few other films.
Yes.
And then, again, the mother then dies because Eric shoots her. And whether they're trying to, I feel like I'm trying to work this out as I go along.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
You're workshopping this.
Trying to figure, it's like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with his red
Pepe
string.
Silva. Who was Pepe Silva?
But I don't know. I mean, obviously they're trying to show the humanity behind the infected, maybe. But how did she get pregnant? Like, and it's kind of, it's supposed that this is the alpha's baby.
Yes.
But like, how? How? And why? And do rage-infected women still have menstrual cycles?
That's such a good question. Are they ovulating?
Like, where's the... I feel like there's a lot of things left out in this when it comes to simple biology that I just need. There's a quote by Dr. Kelson later on that has me and Becky Sace, who's another girl, absolute stumped. And it's to do with this baby and what he says. He says at Spike is explaining it. He's like, I've got this baby, it came from an infected.
Yeah.
We don't know why she's not infected.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kelson goes, the magic of the placenta. And you're like, no, that's not what a placenta does.
The magic of the placenta. That's all you need to know, Ygraine. No more questions. No more questions needed. The placenta did it all.
You're like, do rage-infected placentas, are they a magic cloak? Because generally, for people that don't know, the placenta is the connection between mother and baby, and whatever the mother has gets passed along
Yes.
to the baby through the placenta, whether that's nutrition, etc., etc. You can pass viruses onto your baby through the placenta, obviously. And so I'm like, how is this placenta suddenly a magic placenta that has stopped this baby from getting the rage virus? I just need to know these things. Like, what?
When this film has gone out of its way to explain the alphas are alpha because the way that their bodies have metabolized the virus has caused the steroid effect to the point where they're now the heads of the animal pack. Because these are now animals now, Ygraine. That's the thing. They're not humans, they're animals, right?
Yeah.
But then when they're having the baby, they're back to being human again.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've gone out of your way to explain all that, but then when it comes to like things that actually happen in the film, they just shoo it away with this magic. And that leads me to what I think of this scene, which is the scene I rolled my eyes back so far into my fucking head because I was like, oh my god. It was just like this sick, infected, pregnant woman and Isla, a sick mother who recognizes the miracle of childbirth. And it just felt like Garland and Boyle looking to the camera and just going, aren't women magical?
Yeah.
Like, that's how it felt. And I was like, you can't possibly think that while having a film that does nothing for women. It felt like another bone being chucked. And I was like, and this is a scene I've seen people go, oh my god, it was just... There's people online being like, oh, it just really reminded me like just how amazing childbirth is and we're the bearers of life and just like how womanhood transcends disease and hierarchy. And I was like, what nonsense are you talking about? It does nothing of that. It is literally so patronizing to me. I am not a mother. But to your point you made earlier, which is this film goes out of its way to say that mothers must die for their children.
Yeah.
And if I was a mother, I'd be fucking offended. Because I'm like, I am more than just another body to lie at my children's feet, you know?
Yeah, and something as well that myself and Becky were kind of talking about was this idea of maternal violence and medical malpractice.
Yeah.
And how in, the real world, there's a lot of malpractice and medical violence perpetuated against women, particularly women who are pregnant or in childbirth.
Yeah.
And how there's this idea that, save the child before you save the woman, which is fine if that's your choice. However, let's see women as more than incubators. And I feel like this is something as well with what has happened in Georgia at the moment in the States, unfortunately with a woman who was basically kept alive just to incubate a baby that didn't survive anyway, I don't think.
Yeah.
But, and I feel like the portrayal of the women in this film really perpetuates that. That these women are nothing but sacrifices to let their children live. And it just, it's a bit like, women are just there to bear the children and then they're throwaway. Then they're, you can kill them off and no big deal.
Well, that's literally what happens, right? Because then, before we know it, the alpha arrives, I guess, to find his baby. As you said, we don't really understand the mating practices of the rage virus, but we can assume because of how insistent he is to get to this baby and do what with? Because we've seen no other babies born in the wild from the infected. So we don't know what the alpha wants to do with said baby. But yeah, he kills Eric because whatever. And then it comes after Isla and Spike, who now have baby, and Alpha, who we will later learn is called Samson. He picks up the infected pregnant woman as if to make sure she's dead, and then throws her back down. And I was like, okay. So we really are. They're just disposable. And it's not dissimilar to what Jamie is doing with Isla. Like, oh, you're not well anymore, so I'm going to line up Rosie to replace you.
Yeah.
And so, it's like the rage virus and human men are the same. But But in all of that to be said, like, this again could be really interesting commentary on whether alphas are actually aspirational, especially talk about grifter culture and like having these alpha males, you mentioned earlier, no one even knows what that means, alpha males prey on young boys in order to emulate their behaviors, which tends to lead to extremist viewpoints and especially to use and abuse women. But we can't get into that level of detail, Ygraine, because Samson has the biggest cock ever committed to cinema. And I'm like, what am I meant to take away from this?
And that's a prosthetic.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I read somewhere, maybe in the Screen Rant, that it is a prosthetic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get what the thought was behind that. Whether it's like, oh, because he's an alpha, he's got a giant dong, and you're just like,
because all alphas have massive penises.
Yeah, and like, but the thing that kind of irks me about this, and I'm not an expert on this, and I'm not the voice for this. However, Alpha Samson is played by a person of color. He's the only notable person of color in this film. All the islanders are white. The majority of the infected are white.
Yes.
And the only notable person of color is the very angry big man with a huge dong. And if that's not chasing a white woman with a baby and a young child.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, are they trying to say something? Because I feel like it's just perpetuating damaging stereotypes. And again, like I said, I'm not the expert on this. I am not a person of color. I cannot have, a say on this. I'm just from my own, like, what I'm looking at, and it's giving me the ick. I'm just kind of like, why? I mean, I understand that they're trying to talk about maybe white supremacy and Britain being overrun by, like, the far rights and these people that just want white colonies and that, everyone else is out on the mainland and they're savages in inverted commas. But I feel like you could have done that without making it icky. It just feels real like, well, you could have done that without having an all-white cast and without having the only person of color be this character. Now, the only thing that I can kind of gather from it was when he's hunting for his child, basically, he's chasing, these two have made off with his kid, and he's like, for fuck's sake, come back with me kid. The only thing I can kind of feel that it might have represented was in colonies such as in Australia and in the Americas, when white settlers came, they took children and babies off the indigenous peoples to try and integrate them into white Christian culture.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that I can see that maybe they're trying to represent. However, the baby's very white. I don't know. I don't know whether it's that deep.
I think that's a really good take. I think that's a very generous take. And I'll tell you for why. Because if they try to do that, then why would they make, quote unquote, the indigenous father be someone who rips the heads off white people?
Yeah.
And then I go, oh my god, is there any subversion? Are we just playing into tropes? Are we just using racist tropes? Will they commentate on this in the second film? We don't know.
Especially because the second film's being directed by Nia DaCosta, who is a woman of colour. So I'm hoping that it does get a bit more rounded and we can kind of see what perhaps the first film was trying to do.
I agree. Literally, like, I was going to round off this whole episode by saying I am fully willing to reevaluate this film based on what the second film comes out, because I will be watching it. I'm very intrigued, especially because of DaCosta. Like, I think having a woman's lens, a female lens in this world is necessary at this point. And so I'm very, very excited, especially the fact that she's a person of colour as well, in these very white films. All three of them are very, very white. And so I'm really interested to see how she interprets it. I can only hope. Only hope it closes some of these circles. But yeah, it's massive cock, Samson, great. And even that, like, when I saw it, I literally thought, like, this is so schoolboy. This is so, like, well, how else are we going to show that he's the alpha? Like you said, how else are we going to show he's the alpha? Well, he's going to have a massive dick. That's the
Yeah.
only way. That's the only way. And I just don't get it. I don't get as a woman. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Massive penises, not my bag. That looks terrifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It causes a clench. You're like,
Yeah.
no thanks.
Yeah, but I just think, like, I mean, it's such a stereotype that, like, men are obsessed with massive dicks, and it just felt really immature. It felt a very immature choice. But then I learned Spiker saved by Dr. Kelson, played by an iodinized Rafe Fiennes. And you know what? As late character entries go in films, this is a good one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rafe Fiennes is good anyway, but he brings this, like, levity to his performance, which is really needed, I think, at this point. We're just like, what the fuck is happening? What the hell? And he takes this new family, because we now have a new baby, non-infected baby, to his bone temple. This is something that was utilized so much in the marketing for this film. I was very excited to see. I wanted to know more about it, because again, I don't know if you saw any of those, like, kind of like trailer theories. What could this mean on, like, YouTube and stuff? And I saw people going, is this a cult that worships the infected? It's not that at all, and it's actually this really empathetic and poignant sequence where we see that this Dr. Kelson, who was a GP in the before time, has made it his life's work to ensure that anyone who dies in, like, kind of his area is laid to rest and laid in memoriam for however long those bone towers can last. He doesn't discriminate between infected and uninfected because we're all human. He just has a very kind way, and where we've seen Spike, who has, like, a role model in his dad and then a role model in the Swedish Soldier, we get another role model, Dr. Kelson, but he's so different to the other men he's met. He's kind, which is actually such a rarity in this world, it seems.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Yeah, it was trying to kind of, again, prove this contrast between Spike's dad, and, you know, Dr. Kelson. But again, I just felt it was real, like, you're either this or you're this. You know, you're either strong physically, who can physically protect his family, or you're a caring kind. I'm like, why not both?
Yeah.
Why? No, we don't see Dr. Kelson kill.
No.
He has a very good chance to kill Samson.
Yes.
You know, once he's given him the morphine and kind of put him to sleep, he could chop his head off.
Yeah, 100%.
And he doesn't. That's fine or whatever. But I don't know. I just felt, again, it was very two-dimensional characters. And I guess the placenta comment as well put me right off him. I was just like, stop it. Stop it right now.
You're a doctor. You should know better.
So yeah, I mean, I completely, and you know, and also he represents, if we look at it from a COVID point of view, he represents the scientific community and, you know, those who dealt with the dead and the infected, you know, and he kind of represents that, and how a lot of people didn't believe the medical community and were like, no, we know better and whatever, we're going to ostracize, you know, medical professionals who know about this crap. I don't know, I still felt like it was just real lazy writing, and it just felt a bit too, oh, everything's hopeful, and I mean, I'm not a fan of hopefulness in horror films. I'm very much a fan of nihilism and despair. So that was a bit, and I mean, I guess the bone temples really kind of, they're very reminiscent of the ossuaries. Is that the right word? Of, you know, like Paris, or the crypts in Paris, or those in Prague or Italy. Yeah. And so it's very much, you know, representative of that. But I just wish they hadn't. Maybe it's the marketing that really rubbed me up the wrong way. And that's why, because they made it seem so sinister.
Yes.
But it's not. It's completely opposite. And I don't know whether that has rubbed me up kind of the wrong way. I mean, I went to see it again actually last night with some friends. And it still rubs me up the wrong way. Even when I went in with like no expectations. Yeah, I just feel like he was another facet of lazy writing when it came to writing men. It's like men are either masculine alphas, or they're weirdos because they're gentle, and it just
Yes.
just didn't sit with me.
I think you're totally right, and I 100% get it. But for me, this is the sequence that works the best.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe because I was so fucking tired of these god awful men, I was just happy to see someone who was nice, someone actually, I might eat my own words here, because I was going to say someone who wants to take care of Spike and Isla, but he kills Isla, so maybe that's not right. But yeah, I liked what he could represent, and I totally hear, either end of the spectrum, and then I go, well, I wonder if then Spike becomes the kind of perfect balance of someone who can look after himself but someone who's still empathetic and kind, and that will be challenged in the second film. I'm absolutely sure of it. But at the same time, this is 28 years into living in this world. Surely a few more men, or even just people, should have found that balance before young Spike has. I do hear you, especially compounded with the commentary we had from Jamie, who's like, he's a weirdo. Like, you're totally right. It does really feed into that. But Spike's fulfilling his mission, right? He's like, well, you need to fix my mum. My mum's ill, and we have an examination. And it turns out, well, Dr. Kelson doesn't have the equipment, but he hypothesizes that Isla has cancer, and it has metastasized to her brain. And basically, in the land of Britain as it stands, there's nothing they could do. Because there is no medical infrastructure. So Isla says, I had my suspicions. And they're like, babe, we didn't have to go through all this. So you could have just said at the beginning then. But Isla's whole point in this film is to show Spike his empathy, but also like her idea of parenting is to protect his innocence, and to give him a childhood, as much of a childhood as he could have in this life. She asks at one point, is your dad daft with you? Is he silly with you? Oh, my dad was silly with me, blah blah blah. So she wants him to be a child. So she has tried to protect Spike from the very morbid reality that she is 100% dying, and there's nothing they can do. But ironically, by withholding that information and making them go on this mission to Ralph Fiennes, he has lost his innocence, he has lost his childhood, because she forced him in to that father-parental role dynamic. But it is not explored at all. I don't know any kind of like apology, because she's lucid in these moments. She's aware, and then ultimately, she asked Dr. Kelson to euthanize her, which is very poignant, because we've just ruled in the UK that the right to die, that's just been voted in the House of Commons, and I was like, that's very, very clever timing from Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. But yeah, she opts to die at the hands of Dr. Kelson, and she leaves the baby in her son's arms, again reinforcing this idea that you are a parent, you are a responsible parent figure. And then Dr. Kelson does like his whole like bleaching of the skeleton ritual.
I just love the way he comes back and he's like, here's your man, dumps the skull down in front of poor Spike. Like, how fucking that's traumatic would that be?
So traumatizing. But I appreciate this might not have been your bag, because like you say, you like your nihilism, but when he asks Spike to find a place for his mother, and he picks the very top of the tower and he's positioned it so she's always looking at the sunrise, I was like, that's cute. I'm not mad at that. I liked it. Did you like it? Nihilistic Ygraine?
No, I don't know, I just felt it was too sappy for me. Like,
it is very sappy. You're absolutely right. It is. And I totally get that. It's an absolute personal taste.
I would have thought it'd be great if he like tied her skull around his waist and was like...
She's always with him. Yeah, like, because again, like, we don't see any trauma reaction.
Yeah.
Spike, in some ways, again, this might get built on in the later installments, but Spike is never traumatized by anything he's ever seen. And this is traumatic. This is crazy what's happening. And I guess they're going to say, like, he's born and he doesn't know any better. But, like, like, on his village, they weren't handing you your mum's skull when she died. You know what I mean? This is new to him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit wild. I don't know. I hope it is explored.
I
hope
hope
just
so.
have this kind of like, almost, he's so far gone that he's trying to numb himself.
Yes.
However, I get like a very sneaky suspicion that they're not going to explore it, and they're like, he's grand, look at him.
Well, I don't know, actually, because of the ending. So immediately this scene is like cut short because the alpha has attacked and we're in a little tunnel. And because he's the fucking baby, he wants the baby.
Yeah. Who's a very quiet baby, by the way, for a baby that hasn't had any milk.
That's such a good point.
Like, such a calm baby. It is the anti-rage, apparently.
That's the next level of evolution.
Yeah, because they can't give the baby milk, and so they've just been giving it water. But water is actually really damaging.
I thought
for
that too.
Newborn. I think it hurts their kidneys, basically.
No.
And I'm like, why is this baby so calm? And why does it look like a 3-month-old?
Yeah, it was a very old baby, wasn't it?
It was so old.
Very old baby. Yeah, Samson attacks and Dr. Kelsey's like, I think you should go now because, like, take this baby away from me. So Spike ends up trekking back to the island, and he leaves in a little shopping basket. And he leaves the baby outside the village wall with a note to his father to basically say, Dad, I've got to go on my own. I've got to go on my own coming of age journey. I want to keep walking till I can no longer see the sea. I'll be fine. Oh, by the way, the baby girl's called Isla. And this is when I went, are there no other fucking names in this universe? Like, and I get it. It's named after his mum. But when we go back to what we were saying about how this film has very few women in it, and every time there is more than one woman in a scene, they have to kill off one of them. And I'm like, you've literally just replaced Isla with Isla.
Yeah.
Like, no. Just I don't know, call her Iona or something. Like, just as a variation on the name. I just was like, that's so frustrating. Aaron Taylor-Johnson, he's fuming, apparently. He's fuming. He runs out into the causeway and he's just like, rah! And I'm like, why are you so mad, man? Like, what, where is this? Are you mad because your wife's dead? Are you mad because you now have a baby to look after? Are you mad because your son has abandoned? What? Where? Because I don't know, Ygraine. I really don't know why he was so angry. He was angry.
Think, you know what it is, right? Aaron Taylor-Johnson, bless him.
God love him.
He's not the fucking best actor. Like, he's a himbo. All we need from him is just to take his shirt off and that's it, because he cannot act. And I feel like they were like, we've got to give him some form of range of emotion. So let's have him scream out to the mainland, like, Spike! Spike! Spike!
Spike!
In his awful Geordie accent. Yeah, bless him. Awful in this film.
Well, I literally have zero opinion on the man. Like, people that really love him. And, like, they want him to be the next James Bond. And I'm like, oh, whatever, crack on. Like, get your bag. I don't care. I just don't care. Like, when the cast was released for this film, I actually could not give less of a fuck. Because the whole point of these films is that, when 28 Days Later came out, the most notable name would have been Brendan Gleeson and then maybe Chris Eccleston, right? Like, Cillian Murphy was not the Cillian Murphy we know today. Naomi Harris is not the Naomi Harris we know today. But even in 28 Weeks Later, that's like Rose Byrne and Jeremy Renner's like first.
Idris Elba, Idris Elba's in it,
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I mean Harold Perrineau's in it, but he's a bit more well known. But like, still, like, it's a very small named cast. So when these big names were attached to this, I was a bit like, got my heckles up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit like, no, I want unknowns.
Yeah,
I want to feel like. I mean, that's why Alfie Williams, I think, is probably the best because. I don't know if he has been in anything previous to this, but he felt the most genuine to me. Like, he really did. So anyway, what's his name? Spike. He's off. He's fishing. He's fine. No problems. So this 12-year-old boy, not nary a few days ago, had never been on the mainland before. And not only has he been on twice with both sets of parents and fought however many off, and then had a baby and all this. He's now on his own in the mainland. No fear, this lad. And as some infected, ordinary infected, I should say, attack, he's backed up against this caved in road, and this man pops over the top. I don't even know what he says, actually. You saw it last night. What did he say?
I don't know, because all I can think of is now then.
I know.
I can't even remember what he says or what
he's like, you seem to have like a handle on it, but do you mind if we step in or something like that? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very like, I'm on your level.
Yeah.
Which is something children presenters were known for. Like, they've got to speak on the children's level. And this man is played by Jack O'Connell. He's a slight Scottish accent, which I'm not mad at. It kind of makes sense for the character. And he's got this longish, shoulder hair, blonde hair. He's adorned in cheap fucking jewellery. He's wearing a shell suit. And he has a gang of very similarly dressed people. Now, in the UK, in Britain, it is absolutely no mistake that he is Jimmy Savile coded. Like, he is dressed like Jimmy Savile. And I turned to my husband, Ygraine. And went, what the fuck? Because I'm actually not as mad at this scene as a lot of people are. But what I see it for what it is, which is it's intentionally aggravating. It's intentionally trying to get people to be like, what the fuck? My God, that's mad. Oh, that's ruined the film. That is the whole point.
Yeah.
And therefore I go, is that your only point? Or are you actually going to expand on this ludicrousness?
Yeah.
Or did you just want it for that what the fuck moment,
I thought this was the best fucking scene. Like mighty morphing fucking power Saviles. Like it just fucking, they jump out and there's like this death metal version of the Teletubbies, because this is all connected to the first.
It?
Yeah. So,
oh my God, I didn't even know.
Yeah. So the first scene is this group of blonde kids in Scotland. They're all watching the Teletubbies and their parents are outside the living room. They're like, stay in here, don't move. And all the parents get attacked. And there's this little boy, Jimmy, that escapes and runs down to the church, and his dad is the priest or whatever, and his dad gets attacked or whatever. So this is Jimmy grown up.
Yeah.
And obviously at the time, Jimmy Savile was still thought of as a national treasure, and so his crimes have not been outed. So Jack O'Connell's character, has taken on the persona of someone who was a national treasure and an icon. And so it was bizarre though, and I wonder, and I can't wait to see how Nia DaCosta takes this on.
Yes.
Being an American person.
Being American. Because I've seen so many Americans or American watchers or non-British watchers not understand the reference.
Yeah.
Again, as that film ended, I went, how will an American understand the weight of this? Because, like, everyone who watched it and who was, like, you either knew immediately it was going for the Savile reference, or you were like, is this going to be reference? But everyone's gone, wait, what? You can't do that. You can't do that. And you're right. In 2025, you can't do that. But this is not a film that takes place in 2025 with all the knowledge we have now. And I'm going, ooh, I guess we're going to, for me, if it does go down this line, I'm going, okay, clearly Jimmy, we've seen allusions to Jimmy throughout the film. We saw the man who's tied up with Jimmy carved on him. There's some graffiti on the building that's like, some kind of like Jimmy's coming type thing. So we know
Here's Jimmy.
Here's Jimmy, exactly. We know he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming we're doing the whole, he seems like a friend, but actually he's the most evil fucker you've ever met. Just like Savile. I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be deeper than that. I think it's going to be just that, which I'm not mad at. Again, I'll see how it's handled. Obviously, like predicting how it will be handled. But what an ending!
I know, yeah.
What swing of an ending!
It's thematically, aesthetically, everything. You're just like, what have I like fallen into? Is this like fucking different film altogether? Like, it's so because everything's been so muted. Like,
Yes.
the characters' clothes have been very muted. The colouring is very earthy. And then we get these people in, like you said, bright blonde hair, garish jewelry, like brightly coloured tracksuit bottoms. And you're like, have I taken an edible? Like,
Yeah.
what? I'm so, like, because a couple of weeks ago, I was watching Hellraiser 2 for my podcast, and I decided to have the great idea to have an edible. And then before I went to see this on Monday, I was like, will I take another edible? And I was like, no, because of the end scene.
Yeah, you guys think about that. Wait. I need to be lucid for this.
Yeah.
Because I understand how actual batshit this is. I mean, but the thing is, Ygraine, like, you know, we've commented, we've criticised that this film has been very surface level, has been lazy, but then it takes this just ginormous risk, this leap, and I go, why weren't you doing that for the rest of the film?
Yeah.
I want that film. I want that. That would be so much more fun and crazy and batshit. Because again, like there's some weird moments we haven't talked on because there's other things to talk about. But like, there's some weird dream sequences. I say weird dream sequences. There's one dream sequence in this film, which, you know, the original 28 Days Later does have a dream sequence. But it's not explored any further than that. And that's okay in some ways, because in the first film, it's very realistic dream sequence. Like, Jim wakes up thinking that all of his friends have left him. But in this film, it's like Spike seeing his mum drowning, and he's seeing things caving in, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's not like, I was like, oh, is he like psychically linked or something? But it doesn't go any further than that. And then there's another weird scene where when he's in like the abbey with his mum, and they're camping, and the slow-lo comes and to eat his shoelaces because the slow-lo thinks they're worms, and someone kills the slow-lo. Isla and Spike wake up together, and they're like, how is this slow-lo dead? And then it immediately flashes back to show us it's actually Isla that killed the slow-lo. And I was like, but why did you need to do that? Why did you need to flash back to that? Because we were just there. And there's so many weird, like, editing choices, which I understand. Maybe they were trying to come back to this like hyper reality and this dream state, but it's not committed to it either. And I really don't want to be mean about it, because I appreciate people have put, like, I'm mean about the writing because the writing is lazy. But when it comes to like the cinematography and the editing, I appreciate people have put their whole pusses into that. They really, really did try, but it fell so flat for me. And I think one of the most egregious examples of this, and it just did not work for me, was when Spike and Jamie first leave the island, and we get the Boots poem again. Now, I appreciate Danny Boyle wasn't in charge of the marketing of the film, but when we heard Boots in the trailer, it was like epic, right? It was like, oh my god, this is
terrifying.
So fucking scary, so interesting. Like, what is happening? But they use it in the film, which is why it's in the marketing. And they use it, and it's lost all of its punch by this point, because we've heard it so many times. And it's intercut with shots from, is it Henry V?
Yeah.
Like military shots of these young boys being taught how to shoot arrows, and also shots from the 28 Weeks Later film when the American soldiers just start to kill everyone. And it felt like I was watching a trailer in the middle of this film, and I hated it. I hated it. I was like, why are we watching this? And then we got the visual of, you know, the quarantine around the UK and Ireland, by the way. I had no idea that Ireland got by the rage virus. They kept that quiet until they showed that map.
Yeah, I mean, is this just a thing where they're like, Ireland's part of the UK, right? Of course it is. Of course it is.
There's no drama with saying that statement out loud. Like, I was like, why not include that at the very beginning when you're doing when you're setting the scene? Why does it have to be? It just felt not like the best use of editing. It felt weird for the pace. I hated the red camera shots. Because I'm like, who took that? Because the infected are looking. Yeah.
Who's got the infrared camera?
Who's got it? Because the infected are looking right at the camera with their yellow glowing eyes. I'm like, well, where did this footage come from? Because the infected don't look at the camera in any other scene. And I just, like, those choices, for me, I appreciate, okay, they're swings and they're misses in my eyes. But then, if you could combine that with the final scene with Jack O'Connell's Jimmy, that's a real... I'm not saying I love it, but I really appreciate the ambition of it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how that's all part of the same film.
Yeah, it just, I had a real problem with the cinematography and editing choices. It just felt weird and it took me out several times. Like there's I think it's mainly used in the beginning when they kill the infected and it freeze shots.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it goes round like a matrix.
Yeah,
yes.
But it freezes for a second. And I was like, am I having a stroke? Like, is something wrong with me? Is it me? Am I the drama?
Am I the drama? Am I the villain? I don't think I'm the villain. No. I actually really liked those shots because I wasn't expecting it. Do they add anything to the visual storytelling? No, they don't. But were they different? Yeah, they were. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. But yeah, I mean, they used them very sparingly. But I don't know what does it convey? That's a really good question. What does it add?
I feel like because of the first film, they had like the DV, it was very grimy, it was very whatever, and they were trying to do something similar for this film
with the iPhones.
Yeah, with the iPhones, and they were trying really hard to be like, oh, we're different and we're using something new, but it just didn't work for me personally. It didn't work at all, and I just felt like it was too much. There was too much going on when it came to the cinematography and the editing, and it just didn't. And like, I appreciate people taking risks and not doing what everyone else is doing and not trying to make it seem like another film. But at the same time, like, I need there to be some coherency with it, and not just like, let's throw a load of shit and hope something sticks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt with a lot of it. There was just no straight through to connect all of this. It was just very much like, let's do this massive cinematography, like really in your face, like, my god, scene when they're running across the causeway and there's the northern lights, whatever, but now we're gonna do this weird like cut and edit with documentary footage, and and it just felt so, I don't know if this is the right word, but for me, abrasive. Just very much like it just didn't get me into the world building in the same way that 28 Days Later does. And I know it's not going to be the same film.
Yes.
However, I do feel like you still need something to connect all the films in some way, whether that is the griminess or the peril or the threat or just something. And I felt it was so detached, and I felt like it was almost, you could have been like, well, here's The Walking Dead set in England, like, The Walking Dead UK. That's how I felt about it, rather than this is we're coming back to Britain, who is still being affected by the rage virus. It just didn't feel connected, and that, I think that was my big problem with it. Sorry, that was a huge ramble.
No, not at all. I mean, oh god, please. I welcome it. No, I totally agree with you. I think to your point about the editing, in 28 Days Later, it is very frenetically edited. But the score backs that up.
Yeah.
And this kind of guerrilla style filmmaking, it makes sense from a visual storytelling point of view. They have the very opening of 28 Days Later, we see at this laboratory in Cambridge where they're experimenting on the rage virus on the chimpanzees, but how they intercut the real life footage is, we see these scenes of humanity's atrocities and wars and murder and executions, and we pull back and it's this chimpanzee just being made to watch it. And that's how they intercut the real life footage and world build and set the scene. We understand immediately in that scene what is happening, whereas here it's literally spoon fed to us with these cut-in shots of this medieval army, and I'm like, I don't know. You did it so much smarter and more efficient in 20 odd years ago. Why now is it so abrupt? You said abrasive, and it's incohesive with the rest of the film. It takes us out of it literally takes us out of the film. We're no longer watching the film, we're watching these random bits of film. And then I go, coming back to the infrared scenes, I'm like, who's this film for? Who's cutting these scenes into this film? And that's a question we ask when we watch found footage films, right?
Yeah,
Like who have
yeah.
they edited this film for? And I know this isn't found footage, but in some ways I'm like, these editing choices, I go, who is this for? Is this for us? Is this the audience? It's not for the benefit of the characters that we're watching and we should be watching the film through. And in that, some of the, dialogue choices, some of the jokes they make are not for the characters in the film to laugh. It's for the audience to laugh at. And so again, you're constantly taken out of the world that they're trying so hard to build. And it did not work for me. I know 28 Weeks Later and also the BBC have used In a House in a Heartbeat to death.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really shocked they didn't use it in this film.
Yeah, I thought they might have tied it all together with using that piece.
Yeah. They did use another song from the first film.
Yeah.
I think near the ending, actually.
Yeah.
And I clocked that, but I was like, oh, but like In a House and Heartbeat is like such a fucking banger, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was like, where is it? It's not here. Okay, so I just wanted to wrap things up before we get into like the ratings and stuff with what do you think will happen in the next film?
I've not a bleeding clue, to be honest. Anything could happen, couldn't it? I don't know. Like whether they start to explore this like false idolism.
Yes.
I mean, it has come out that, I think it was Danny Boyle said, in this film we explore family, in the next film evil is explored. So maybe it becomes a lot more nihilistic, which I would enjoy a bit more. But is it going to be like we're now exploring humanity's evil through Jack O'Connell's gang? And I'm like, is it going to be as basically written as the first one is? Because I know I keep bringing it up, but if you look at shows like The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, they're already exploring the evils of humanity in a real basic way. So what else can... I think this is called Bone Temple. I think the new one's called.
Is.
What can Bone Temple explore when it comes to the evil of humanity that hasn't already been explored in shows like The Walking Dead? Because that's one of the problems with The Walking Dead, is that repetitiveness of, oh, here's some bad people that are just as bad as the zombies. So what else can they do that's not just that?
Yeah, and I remember they took that from 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a problem I think the film has, which I didn't foresee when it was announced, which is, you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, you mentioned how 28 Days Later revitalized the zombie genre. It made them scary again. And every piece of zombie media has tried to emulate the 28 Days Later motifs. But now, 28 years later, either just keeps, chugging that same circle, like pushing the same wheel, which it seems to be doing, or it reinvents itself again. And that's a lot of pressure, right? It's a lot of pressure. And I would say from this first installment, it has not succeeded. It's nothing we haven't seen before. Like, I want to watch a film that explores these themes against the backdrop of a post-apocalyptic, zombie-infected Britain. I am there.
Yeah.
But this isn't that. Isn't that. This is a film that takes some really low blows and calls it good commentary.
Yeah.
I think I hadn't heard that thing from Danny Boyle about exploring evil. I definitely think, obviously, like, Jack O'Connell's going to have a much bigger part in the next film. We're going to see, him just being absolute evil cunt. But, like, how evil can he be that we haven't seen before? You know what I mean? Like you're absolutely right. Like, that was The Walking Dead's demise.
Yeah.
It's just, how evil can you be?
Yeah. I mean the fact that even one of the Walking Dead series centers on a tribe of like evil humans called the Alphas, and you're just kind of like,
oh my god, it does.
Yeah, the alpha in that is, the head of the tribe and blah 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 blah. And
I
it's
didn't
like,
even think of that. Yeah.
The fact that, when me and my friend went to see this the first time round, I was like, it feels like a Walking Dead ripoff, and he was like, well, Walking Dead ripped off 28 Days Later, and I was like, well, is that not even worse that it's a rip-off of a rip-off? Like, what? Like, I don't know. I have high hopes because of Nia DaCosta, and I will be there with just as much excitement as I did have for this one. But I'm holding my breath a bit, and not in a good way.
Yeah. Think like I remembered what I was going to say. Oh my god, sorry, I got really excited. Okay, so really interestingly, the infected, the whole point of the rage virus in the first film is that it's not, like you mentioned earlier, it's not your usual zombies. They're not like brain eating,
corpses. Yeah.
They are a vessel to spread a virus. That is the virus's goal, to consume, right? But in this film, we see no one turn after the opening sequence.
Yeah.
I know a couple of the Swedish soldiers must, but we don't know them. We never see their faces. No one else is ever turned to the infected. The Alpha's goal isn't to recruit more infected to his pack. It's to destroy. And so I go, what's the point then? Like, I appreciate the virus is meant to have evolved, but I don't, evolved to what? And going back to the whole pregnancy and procreation argument, how long have they been procreating for? Because there's one child infected in the slow-mo scene, which is never mentioned again. You could blink and miss that. But there's no children infected who are born from infected and then made infected by maybe the Alpha, and maybe that's explored in the next film. But I'm just so confused at what the virus is meant to do, because it doesn't want to transmit anymore. Otherwise, we would see that, and we're not seeing that, and they're just having their heads torn off and their spines. Love that, by the way. Like, just, how convenient. Just rip off some heads and their spines go with them. Like, oh, glorious. Great. Do the infected eat the humans? Because we only ever see them eat the deer.
Deer. Yeah.
I have all these questions, and maybe they will be answered.
Yeah.
But I also, because so much was left on the table and never mentioned again, I go, was that just there for a beat? And you don't want us to focus, like the whole magic of the placenta thing. They just went, here's a line to keep the story going, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. There's just too much. I feel like they've just been like, well, the virus evolved, and we're meant to just go, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I get it. But yeah, I just need some more. Whether perhaps they bring in outside scientists later on, or, whether they're going to go down that route. But yeah, I just need a bit more.
I agree. Because in 28 Weeks Later, arguably, Robert Carlyle's role, he's like, seems to be like a more evolved infected. And I know that's like something people hate about the film, because he can avoid the napalm bombs, and he can avoid he seems to really fucking hate his wife, and all those kind of things. Again, these films do have a problem with like women, don't they? They really, really do. But yeah, like, so people were going, oh, he's like a more evolved version, maybe because he was born from a carrier of the infected, and maybe that causes something. But when he then spreads it, none of them are more evolved. So it's like, so that doesn't really carry out. So I don't know whether that's just like a bad plot point or what. But here, usually viruses evolve through generations and spreading and stuff. But there's not that many people. There's only so many people in the population. Like, I don't know that I just have. I appreciate this is just a fantastical horror film, but it's trying so hard to be realistic in some ways, and then asking you to suspend your disbelief in others, and I just get confused with what I'm meant to do.
I know, yeah. I just feel like we need to get Danny Boyle on the line, or Alex, and just be like, here, got a lot of questions.
Like I'm not trying to be a shady bitch. You know what? Like, something I have to give it credit for, even though this is the most backhanded compliment in the world. So me and my husband left this screening at like 11 p.m. on Thursday night, and we have spoken about it every day since then. Just going, the what? And so, like, a film, it's had an impact. You know what I mean?
Has, yeah.
So that's credit where credit's due. Like, I've not stopped thinking about this film. I will 100% see it again. I will 100% be there for the next one. But I am, like, disappointed. I have like a Substack article That's going to go up probably tomorrow, kind of like as a partner to this episode, just of my own thoughts and a lot of things we've covered here today, just because some people like to read rather than listen. But I'm just, it really has consumed a lot of my thinking these past like 4 or 5 days. Maybe that's because the expectations were so high and I feel let down. But then at the same time, what did you rate this on Letterboxd?
I think I gave it a 2.
A 2, yeah. I gave it 2.5.
Yeah.
Which means there were some things we did like. So maybe before we get into ratings, what did we like about this one? Because I feel we've just shat on it, which is not unwarranted, but like, what were the positives for you to give it 2 stars?
Thanks for making me analyze my own fucking... I liked the idea of like the spines and the skulls.
Love that,
and
yeah.
this kind of like, I liked that aspect because I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I liked the design of the bone temple. I thought that was really, really cool. And I do like Jodie Comer.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'm just kind of like, what did I like about this film? Because I can't, I'm going to actually change my marking now and be like, maybe it's a 1.
Maybe it's a... Did you like the opening scene?
All I can think of is the kid going, why have you forsaken me, father?
Why indeed, though, Jimmy? Why indeed?
I was like, no kid fucking talks like that. Father. All I can think of is Matt Berry being like, father. I don't think it was as impactful. I think because we saw a lot of the opening scene in the trailers, I don't think it was as impactful as it could have been.
I thought it was really short.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a lot longer. You know, if you compare it to 28 Weeks Later, which has a fantastic opening scene, and that's like a good 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
And this is genuinely, maybe 3 minutes long. It's very short. Shit hits the fan really quickly. Something I wish they explored a little bit more, because they make a point to say it's in the Highlands of Scotland. Therefore, it would have taken a good minute to get up there. That's the middle of bumfuck nowhere. I know, I'm from there. Like, it would have taken it. They would have known this was coming. Why was there no more prep or some? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But no, it just goes from like 0 to 11 in 30 seconds. Did think it was bold, even though it was off camera, just to like slaughter all those kids. Thought that was bold. So yeah, all right, crack on. But then it immediately cuts to like Jimmy apparently is able to escape the house and get to the church. I mean, how did you do that though, Jimmy? And then his dad is a piece of shit. And I was just like, so ultimately, and I come back to this theme, I go like, is this the theme of these films just shit fucking fathers? Is that what this is? Maybe, while sacrificing every single woman in the way.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm very confused about it, if I'm completely honest.
No, but we are. I mean, I think we're currently on 1 hour 40 something of this podcast. So yeah, and I don't feel any clearer.
No, I don't either. I thought that talking through it,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. If anything, I feel more confused. Yeah. But it's making money. It's making money for British cinema, which I am never going to be mad at. And we will be getting a sequel. And it was filmed back to back, Ygraine. Yeah. It was filmed back to fucking back. That's how it should be fucking done. All right?
Not waiting several years for fucking...
The Last of Us, take fucking note. I'm so mad at that show. I'm mad at that show for so many reasons. But the biggest thing, I'm mad at the production. You knew you needed another season. Why have you not filmed it back? Release it 6 months later. No, you're going to release it in 3 fucking years. You dumb studio. And they've already ruined it. So
yeah, I know. Yeah,
they've already ruined it. On that note, another zombie thing. Another zombie IP they've ruined. Anyway, Ygraine, you may remember when you were last here that we like to rate our films based on how well they represent fat bodies. Now, I appreciate we spent about 20 minutes talking about fat bodies because there's very few fat body representation. But we will stick to the rules of the podcast. So, out of a possible 5 Ygraines, what would you give 28 years later for fat representation?
I'm going to go with 0, or perhaps half, if I'm being nice, but we're going to go with 0.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's a 0, because, you know, I don't know whether your half was going to be like, at least we saw some fat people.
Yeah.
The bar is on the floor.
Yeah.
It's on the slow, low floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Down by the worms.
Down by the worms. Oh my god. They literally went, oh my god, fat people are at the bottom of the rung, aren't they? Let's literally. Ugh,
Yeah.
arseholes. Arseholes! Anyway, yeah, it's a 0 Hannahs for me as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be interesting to see, because I don't know if much of the cast have been announced for the next film. But I obviously know, like, Alfie Williams, Jack O'Connell, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Ralph Fiennes are all returning. Apparently, Cillian Murphy is coming back in the next one.
I heard he was perhaps in the third one.
I don't know them. I thought he was in the second. Maybe he's in the third. Also,
Maybe
on
he's
that,
in the second.
why are all the men called Jim or Jamie? Why are they all got the same name?
So this confused me because obviously we've got these dodgy Geordie accents, right? And so I thought Aaron Taylor-Johnson's character was called Jimmy, right? And so when the body appeared with
I don't know how you would say that.
Jimmy. So that was really bad. So when all these like Jimmy signs, I was like,
is that him?
Yeah, I was like, is no one going to comment that some lad has like Jimmy carved into his? Also, what? Oh, I know we're going to keep going, but like, why wasn't that brought up? Surely, if you've seen a corpse or an infected, with Jimmy carved into it, would you not go, "Who's Jimmy?" Like, why has he got Jimmy carved into him?
Well, they explain it away by saying there are bad people on the mainland. They're crazy people on the mainland. You know, they just do this because they're not crazy. The villagers aren't crazy. Or maybe the call is coming from within inside the island. Some may say, I wonder what will happen. Because obviously, right, the Alpha is going to attack the village because they've got baby.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, that's going to happen. But Spike knows that.
God damn it, Spike.
Jesus Christ.
He's done the smart thing and he's just been like, well, I'm off.
Maybe the whole plan was just so like the Alpha kills his dad. I do have a theory, but Aaron Taylor-Johnson will become an Alpha infected.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Does that mean we'll get to see his dong?
You know what? I fucking hope not. Anything else, Ygraine?
I think we've extensively covered everything from A to dong.
I can't do any better than that. On that note, that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Ygraine. I mean, like I say, I don't know if we've made it better or worse. I just hope it's been an interesting conversation. Something I've seen a lot of online is this absolute 100% devotion to this film with no criticism. And if you are criticizing it, you're being accused of not having media literacy. And that pisses me off so much because I'm like, the reason why I'm criticizing it is because I do have media literacy.
Yeah. No, I saw that a lot with Nosferatu as well, because I didn't like Nosferatu either. And I saw that a lot with Nosferatu, and I was like...
Aaron Taylor-Johnson again, being a
my God,
weirdo. Because, sorry, this is absolutely a tangent to Nosferatu, but he rapes his wife's corpse, right? That is 100% happening. And I saw people going like, oh, isn't he a good husband? Are you fucking for real? Get out of your arse. He's a terrible human being.
It's just Aaron Taylor-Johnson, isn't it?
All the men are terrible in that film. That's the point. I can't win. I just feel like feminism, and also like feminism being explored in film, and it's probably not unrelated to the rise in conservatism, is just being rolled back to the point where we're happy we're involved.
Yeah.
We're happy at least there's a woman. Yeah. Who cares if her husband rapes her? At least he's hot. Like, that's where we've got to. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Please let me and the listeners know where they can find more of you and your work.
So you can check out my podcast, Gore Things, which is myself and my co-host, Bradley Hanson. We discuss splatter and gore in cinema. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, and we are at gorethings_pod on Instagram. And you can check me out at What a Scream on Instagram as well. That's the place where I'm most kind of active on social media. And you can also check out the website, whatascreampodcast.com, for reviews and writings and all that fun stuff.
Perfect. And the links to all of Ygraine's links will be in the show notes below to make it super, super easy for the listeners to give you a follow and keep up to date with your work. And the listeners can find the podcast at Fats on Film on Instagram and myself at Queen Bee Says on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we will catch you at the next episode. And remember to stay fat. Woo!